it's kind of started with writing, gone up the stack all the way to multimedia. But now you have, of course, like audio with like Suno, Udio for music. You've got these amazing video editing tools, but it's kind of covering that landscape. And we haven't even touched things like sales intelligence tools. 2025 will also be the year of agents. We really will have like a bot powered internet that's rebranded to just like agents, but there'll be a lot of mess, but it's very innovative. But yeah, it's kind of creeped up the tech stack from text all the way up to multimedia and like agentic behavior.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. This is Marc Verbenkov, your host as always. Today is episode number 178, and we are again touching on the topic of artificial intelligence and how it is going to be impacting marketing, advertising, and content creation as kind of a larger topic here. I think this is such an interesting touch point or topic du jour because of the ever-increasing amount of AI-generated content out there. I'm sure any of you listening who go on social media at any point, you see some of those quick videos or shorts of the latest version of what AI can produce. And some of the ones that I've seen very recently are about as close to a normal, average-looking human being as you can possibly get. So I think as time goes on, which is certainly something that we touch on the podcast quite a bit, it's going to get pretty interesting, needless to say. So I'm glad to have a guest on today who's right in the thick of things, and we will be discussing these kinds of impacts and how AI is getting integrated into all of these industries. We also touch on the rapid development of these AI tools and how they were adopted right over the last couple of years, obviously touching on how that's going to be impacting things in the next couple of years. We touch largely on AI generated content and how that's going to be impacting whether it's these industries or always, which is one of my favorite discussion points, job markets, whether it's the entertainment industry or the actual content creators. And then one of the things that we touch on in the future, which is something that I think all of us need to be thinking about a little bit more, is how this natural language and the commands that you can give through natural language is going to be impacting the way that we actually work. So we touch on all these things and a lot more in the episode today. It was great to have Corbett Drummey on the episode. I can introduce him very quickly, and then let's jump into the interview because it's a great discussion point. So Corbett is the VP of Brand Collaborations at Lightricks, where he drives strategic partnerships between Lightricks and brands, leveraging technology to enhance and accelerate marketing and advertising campaigns. He also oversees strategic marketing for Lightricks AI-powered storytelling platform, LTX Studio. He was the co-founder and CEO of Popular Pays. This is an industry-leading software company that enabled an agile approach to advertising, and it was subsequently acquired by Lightricks in March of 2022. Corbett made the 2018 Forbes 30 Under 30 in marketing and advertising, and is an alumnus of Y Combinator W15. So needless to say, it's a great conversation. Corbett is a wealth of insights, and it was great to have him share some of those ideas with all of us today. Thanks for listening. Corbett, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today. It's a pleasure to have you on to talk about some interesting places that are coming together: marketing, advertising, AI, content creation. As we talked about right before the recording, this is kind of one of the main places that we're seeing a lot of AI influence, and I'll let you get into it. Thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to talk about it as well.
Yeah. what made you get started in this interesting world? Like, were you first interested in AI? Were you first interested in, advertising, marketing? Or you're
Mhm.
interested in both, and they just kind of naturally came together? What was the start for you?
Definitely always interested in technology from very early days, like looking through, old science mags, like from as a kid, always interested in tech. I would get gadgets and play around with them. That's been a lifelong passion. In
Mm,
terms of advertising, my mom's a graphic designer, and I've always liked that, my dad's in biz dev, my mom's a designer. I always felt like advertising is the mixture of business and creativity. So I was attracted to that. I went into that right after college. But for AI, I would say it became increasingly apparent in the advertising industry that if things keep progressing, we're going to encounter this kind of like advertising singularity or content singularity much earlier than the classical like Ray Kurzweil, AI
mm,
singularity, in the sense that you'll end up having, you know, um, human assisted and then AI driven content creation optimized by AI faster than a human can be in a loop. And so we kind of got obsessed with that idea in past years, knowing that we're going to be in for one heck of a ride in the coming decade, and we try to figure out like what to do about it. I think for a long time it will be AI powered, or like it'll be humans and creators using tools, and that's who will have the advantage. But if you extrapolate long enough, it ends up being there will be some systems where humans aren't in the mix at all.
yeah. I definitely want to jump into that with you, maybe the end of the podcast, because that's also very similar thinking to what I have, right? There's also so many guests have come on and talked about, I don't know the time range. We can say like 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, or something like that, where AI and human centaur teams, right, are coming together, and they're going to become, these overpowered productivity engines compared to humans that are just not using AI.
Yeah.
And but yeah, past that 7 or 10 year time horizon, that's where things get, very, very interesting. Should we talk a little bit about the context of what's happening now, or what has happened over the last, say, what is it, a little bit over 2 years now since ChatGPT came out and the general
Sure.
public became aware of generative AI?
Yeah, and actually, before we go into that, Centaur is an awesome name if someone wants to create an AI powered tools company. But and also,
Mm,
fortunately, when we're talking about like where humans won't be in the mix, that at first will be really niche, and it'll. I have some examples we can talk through that are more near
mm,
term,
mm,
but long term, in a sense of like, will AI take my jobs? It's quite long term, and I think that's the funny like darkly funny thing about that, and the kind of relief is that it will be equitable. Like if it happens in one industry, it's gonna happen to everything. So like don't think that it's coming just for you. It's kind
right.
of like a rising flood where it'll cover certain things earlier than others. And it's really unpredictable where it's gonna happen. Like people probably didn't realize how much AI assisted coding would change in the last year. But content was probably the first like the epicenter of that change. Like post ChatGPT, as you mentioned, it was LLMs tackling like copywriting. So that was probably the first hit to workflows. But then multimedia types of content started appearing. But engineering is now quite a huge use case for these AI powered tools. And you hear a lot of engineers say that they just can't go back to coding without a copilot an AI copilot, because they feel like they're too ineffective without it. So yeah, it's coming everywhere, and it's something we'll all have to grapple with. But the timelines in general are quite long, and like if we're thinking humans out of the mix. So it's
Mm,
fun to think about long term, like what impact's going to happen. But I don't think people need to be anxious short term, because there's still so much work to do. And these tools will open up so many things you could do. Like we have so much to explore with science and technology in general. So I'm 100% like not worried about that. Although yes, it'll be difficult for everyone, but there's plenty to do.
right. And maybe just a final point on this. The general message that I've been getting, which I'm sure you're going to say the same thing, is get accustomed with AI tools today, so
Yeah.
that even if this inundation happens in whatever 10 years plus, where humans are out of the mix, it's the people that are using AI now that are going to be they're going to be more relevant, they're going to be more productive, and they're just going to be the people that are going to be employed in running businesses, and those that don't, they're going to be outcompeted, I guess you can say.
Absolutely. And from a micro basis to a macro one, like ChatGPT is my default search engine. I use it in like 80% of the time now,
Mhm.
90% now maybe. It's pretty crazy. But then on, in terms of workflows at your day-to-day job, even that, it's getting more and more to the point where like if anyone's used like Gong for sales outreach, that's now become like a key part of my workflow. This is not a sponsored message, but like it makes it so much easier to have calls like recorded and annotated, follow-ups, suggested notes to have remembered, and you can share snippets of things. Like these tools are at first most people just kind of shoehorned AI into it, but people are getting smarter now, and then some tools are built AI from the ground up, and people using those will just simply be much more productive. And so, whether you're an engineer, a creator, a movie director, or editor, etc., I think you need to lean into it. So it's a time of change, but fortunately, it's impacting everyone in a sense that it's not targeted to just you. So we all have to learn, but we're going to get a lot of positive things from it.
Yeah, yeah, no, completely agree with you. Should we double click on the impacts in marketing and advertising just for a couple minutes here?
Yeah.
You obviously mentioned ChatGPT and copywriting, which I think is, you know, the easiest example for anybody to understand, and I'm sure most of the listeners have heard this a couple times. What are some other things, apart from maybe image generation and social media post content
Mhm.
creation has been relatively automated to a
Yeah.
certain extent. What are some other things that might be interesting for people to know about?
Marketing is funny because it's kind of like the wild, wild west. It's this like land of experimentation where there aren't really that many rules and people are really forgiving. There's a lot of annoying things that happen, and sometimes I don't feel proud if you're in a space where most advertisements are built to be ignored. But it is very creative, experimental, innovative, and so a lot of key things get built in the marketing world first. But it's honestly impacted everything across the board. I've seen this. Let's just take different pieces of that funnel. Like you said, it started with copywriting, image and video generation. I would say that for that kind of stuff, images are getting really good at almost being pixel perfect. Like now, the latest, like we're talking, January 2025, you've gotten to a point where you cannot tell between AI and human created stuff. That's true for
Mhm.
certain things. Like it's gotten really good at making an example of like an iPhone photo, and certain things it's still bad at. Video is the next frontier. One huge key recommendation for that is the people I've seen use these tools the best are using them for like rapid prototyping. And you can either do one of two things. You can lean into the glitchiness of the forefront of these tools and not shy away from it, but embrace it. So a good example is, Coca-Cola doing an ad where, like their museum ad where paintings were reaching out, grabbing a Coca-Cola, and it was glitchy animations, but they didn't shy away from that. They embraced it. So
Mhm.
that's one tactic, and then the other would be to use it for prototyping. So here's the scene you can make in 3 minutes with LTX Studio, like a storyboard, and then go out and shoot it. So that's another example. But yeah, it's kind of started with writing, gone up the stack all the way to multimedia. But now you have, of course, like audio with like Suno, Udio for music. You've got these amazing video editing tools, but it's kind of covering that landscape. And we haven't even touched things like sales intelligence tools. 2025 will also be the year of agents. We really will have like a bot powered internet that's rebranded to just like agents, but there'll be a lot of mess. But it's very innovative. But yeah, it's kind of creeped up the tech stack from text all the way up to multimedia and like agentic behavior.
Yeah, the whole agent revolution, I've been told is a potential term for it. Very, very interesting to see how it'll shape up and what some of the businesses that will use them will do with them, whether they'll increase their workforce or decrease their workforce, which is always kind of like one of the sub conversations that's always connected to this, right? Whether people are
Mhm.
hired on or let go. Um,
Even
I'm
to
kind
that,
of,
actually,
yeah,
for
go ahead.
the question about like employees, I can speak both internally at Lightricks, as well as people I've seen. Of course, there will be some people that are just hit like dead on where it's harder. For example, one that might have been impacted early is like so if someone is managing internationalizing and translating text. That could be an example of being hit quite dead on. But in general, for example, Lightricks has a really large, out of our 500 plus people, there's quite a large marketing department. And in general, the teammates have become, 5x more productive, and they've rethought their workflow with AI tools. But we're kind of just, I think companies in general are tasking more to people, not necessarily laying off. However, I would say that I think it could happen where people will not hire as aggressively. So I see some reports from public companies saying like we're not hiring as aggressively with things like engineering or customer support. I don't think there's as many layoffs, but I think that it is impacting workflows so much that they're realizing they can just continue to scale their work with their same team. So that could very much be happening.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I guess this also kind of goes back to one of the points that I was making where the individuals and certainly the companies that are using AI are going to be able to scale significantly or grow significantly faster, and therefore, are likely or more likely to hire, irrespective of what you just said. But those companies that aren't doing that are not going to grow, therefore they're not going to be able to hire anyone new. One question, kind of connected to this is, so I mean, you clearly have a team that's using these AI tools all the time. What is, or what have been any kind of challenges or issues with, training your team on like incentivizing them to use new tools? I'm assuming that you have, a very motivated and productive team that wants to learn all the time. But if there are, say, other companies out there that, there's some hesitancy, right? There's always adoption hesitancy and hesitancy towards new, innovations. What have your experiences been? What are your thoughts on that?
This is a really interesting topic. So I can talk about like Lightricks, but
Yeah.
also we commissioned a study about adoption. If people search, like Lightricks AMA AI survey, they can see the results. But there's a few things to call out here. One of the most fascinating things that we found is that adoption is being led for this tech cycle by executives, which is completely different than everything else we've seen. So if you think about like mobile, social, the
Mm.
growth of Facebook, stuff like that, it's always been, even tools like, I don't know, using Figma or something, people will always assume that it starts at the front line. People are adopting something, whether it's Facebook or Figma, and it kind of percolates up to the executives. And the C-suite is they're the last folks to know about it. This is like pretty conclusively going the other direction where I think potentially, we know the data where we can guess at the causes, but potentially because executives know how transformative this will be and how fast it's changing. Even though it's not there yet, always on the use case, like the frontline workers might not say, they might say, look, it's cool, but it's not giving me final pixels yet, so I can't really use it yet.
Mm.
Well, the executives are saying, look, you've got to start using this. So it's used everything, whether it's like weekly usage, amount of training, how important they rank it, almost every stat, this C-suite and like upper level of organizations are adopting AI more. And I've even seen this at Lightricks ourselves. Like we're unique in the sense that our C-suite is super technical. Like our CEO is, like a PhD level, has been working in machine learning and AI for, since he was getting his PhD. Always on the forefront of the latest in image manipulation. But they're very good about calling out and making sure teammates are aware of the progress of things. And I'm an AI like, aficionado, but I still was getting trained. They would hold working sessions. I remember like months ago, they were saying, look, try to make like a simple game like Pong in your browser, even if you don't know how to code. And I was shocked that I was able to with like 5 minutes of work, even though I didn't know how to code. So like they do these kind of official trainings, and that's a good one, or like shared Slack channels to show workflows. But yeah, I would say the huge things to take away from this is executives are leading the charge with adoption. And I've even seen this in my day-to-day, which is you really need to double down on the training and dispersing information to your teams because it's moving so fast. Even people who love it, like me, are not always on top of it.
Very interesting. Okay, so we're seeing clearly, productivity and efficiency boosts from individuals. I mean, whether from freelancers or to large companies that are using this. What do you think of the other side of things, where it's the the consumer and their relationship with content. Let's just focus on content for now, or advertisements, which is part of content, and their consumption of AI generated media, content, etc. You brought up this example of Coca-Cola. I think I saw it a while back, and I can't remember exactly everything about it, but I get a sense of maybe cheapness, or it's like, oh, they're just using AI and it's, okay, it took them 5 minutes to do. So this is, why are they wasting my time kind of thing. And I kind of get the sense that some other people or many other people are thinking that as well. What have you been experiencing?
It's a really fun thing to talk about in the sense that most of the people listening to this podcast probably are on the evangelistic side of AI, and they're like natural AI aficionados. However, it is worth saying that most or a lot of the just general consumer base, there is a strong, negative sentiment in some areas in reaction to AI content. This could be for a few things. It could be worries about taking like artist jobs. It can be just the quality of the content feeling like is generic. And definitely if the word of the year for 2024 wasn't AI slop, it might be moving forward. And this is something that you both need to keep in mind in terms of how you're creating your products, as like if you're in this field as well as if you're a creator in the field. But there's like three things I can say about this. The first is like when we're making products. So we released our own foundational video model, LTXV, and recently we also announced a partnership with Shutterstock about trying to train these models while paying some of that revenue to the people whose data it's trained on. So we're like very intentionally licensing data, and that's a core thing we're going to keep progressing on. So like that's part of it. And even when we build products, though, you kind of naturally by default get a certain like generic AI look with things. But we put in things like this amazing feature, style transfer, where you can put in a single image and radically transform the outputs. So you're not getting that same like generic looking AI imagery. So like as we're creating products, we're thinking about this, and creators should think about it. Like I think it takes taste and experience to get like good results with these things. It's like learning any new tool. It's not going to do the problem for you, and I don't think people should be worried in the sense that it's also not going to make like Dune 3 for you. It still requires like someone to prompt it and have the creativity and the craftsmanship of like getting it from AI slop to something that's really good. But really, we're not quite there yet. Like it's still infancy. It's the early days, but pretty soon, I think the audience will react better once people are able to make things that's a step above what they're used to. And I guess one good example I can give is we'll probably see this watershed moment as creators adopt it, where we have like the next beloved Rick and Morty that was made by some creator and distributed on like YouTube, or on their made on their phone, distributed on YouTube or something, and we'll have in the combination of algorithmic content feeds, because there'll be a ton of slop, that's true, but there'll be some diamonds that are up that are 10 times better than before. And so I think it's not going to replace like your favorite creator on TikTok, but I think it will open up this gap between like TikTok and Netflix, and we'll have beloved new content series and creators making totally new types of stuff. And I think that's where people will start to, the quality isn't really there yet, and it will be.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of opened up what will be, I think, Pandora's box in the entertainment industry, right? As well, you'll have individuals. I mean, if you think about it, YouTube has just dropped a bomb on the amount of entertainment that I guess our whole civilization is able to consume, right? I can't remember the numbers, but it's just an insane amount of gigabytes or terabytes now that is being generated every single hour. And I think with these AI tools, as you said, it's going to maybe take some time for the quality to get up there, but you can just think of it as, I don't know, I would assume like an exponential growth of the amount of quality content that could be generated from fewer and fewer, smaller and smaller teams or individuals, or be able to create, like a Rick and Morty kind of experience if you're using, AI generated voices and video and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting future, and a very distracting one, I think, as well.
Yeah, I don't know if people have ever read like this is a super nerdy reference, but Infinite Jest, where there's a piece of entertainment that's so addicting that once you are exposed to it, it can't be removed from you because you become like irate and like you just can't be consoled. We see that a little bit sometimes with like young kids and iPads, but there is something we have to kind of watch out for, which is we're continuing to like refine the potency of content, and the most addicting channels now have to put protections to prevent people from spending too much time on them. So I might put like a screen time control so I don't open Twitter as much, or TikTok. If you scroll too much, it has a video to like stop you from endlessly scrolling. But that is something we'll have to contend with. We're kind of not built for just how powerful algorithmic feeds combined with like ever more potent tools for creating content, and just the breadth of people doing it, like the diamonds in the rough that appear from that many people contributing, they're just so good. So it's tough. It's not something that's gonna change. Like, way back from the Luddite days where people tried to stop the pace of this stuff, it's not like you're able to just like put a stop to
No.
the river, but we can hopefully direct it in positive ways. There are certain markets where technology progress is more productive and more beneficial than others. And so I think we can direct. I think it's foolish to think that it's just going to unfold in one way. We can definitely direct it, but I don't think it can be stopped. But hopefully we can make sure that the outputs are really positive for people.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's always the hope with any kind of new innovation or technology. It's, we want a positive, bright, shining future, and then, whatever, society, individuals, human nature corrupts it to a certain extent, and you
That's what
get
we do.
all the issues with social media, which should be a lesson for this new AI revolution that we're coming about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
maybe we can shift the conversation a little bit more to exactly what you guys are doing, right? You've mentioned it, you've dropped it a couple times. Do you want to maybe start off with the relationship between brands and creators? I'm kind of opening this segment of the podcast for us to talk about exactly what you guys are doing, but happy to kind of go down any kind of interesting paths there.
Yeah, maybe I'll give a general overview of Lightricks and what we're up to, and you can let me know if there's any you want to focus
Mm,
on. But
mm,
as some context, so I was the CEO and co-founder of Popular Pays, a platform that connects brands and content creators to make branded content across social, influencer posts, stuff like that. Lightricks acquired Popular Pays 3 years ago, and about a year ago, though, I started working more and focusing more on Lightrix's new AI video product, LTX Studio. So that's honestly a really groundbreaking product that imagine like ChatGPT, but instead of getting back a single video from Sora or something, you're getting a full storyboard where you can add, sound effects, dialogue, change individual pieces of shots. I can remove something from a certain scene. I can get different animations, and you can stitch it all together into an output. So maybe I'm collaborating with you on a project, and we can export it as a full movie, or export the working files and keep editing in a different platform. So that's been amazing, but more than that, it's not like a wrapper on other technology. We made our own video model. So the
mm.
animations that you see when you generate motion in that, it's built from our own open source model, LTXV. So LTXV, so LTX Video, that is open sourced, and it's one of the few ones out there. Most of the world landscape for AI video is closed. So you can get like an API and get a video, and pay for a video and get a result back. But we wanted to also put something out in the community so people can do cool things with research and contribute as a community, and have some kind of alternative to the only like the walled gardens of every other one. And but the main goal with it was to create something that was like incredibly efficient while having great quality. So it's the only model today that it will generate it'll generate video faster than you can watch it. So you don't have to wait 10 minutes for a result. You can get, a like 10 seconds of video in 1.5 seconds of compute time. And honestly, I feel like when I'm using it, the issue is more of like my internet connection slowing the result of the video coming to me than like the computing time it
Right.
takes to generate it. So some pretty cool stuff afoot, but yeah, I joined the whole Pop Pays team, joined after Popular Pays was acquired, but last year have been mostly focused on LTX Studio and bringing that to market, especially for brands.
Yeah. I mean that's a really really interesting and fascinating thing that you're working on there. It'd be great to look at that a little bit more. Who are some of the main, I mean, obviously you don't have to give names, but like the types of clients that are using this?
Mm.
Because I think that would give a good kind of visual or an idea as to how it's used. as well.
Yeah, and one thing that's worth noting is most people know of Lightricks because of our B2C companies. Like Facetune is an incredibly popular app under the Lightricks umbrella. But Popular Pays was the first kind of B2B instance under Lightricks. And now LTX Studio is both B2C in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
there's a free tier. Anyone can go to, LTX.studio and get an hour of free compute time and play around with it, but we also are bringing it to market for brands. So my job is more on the go to market for the brand side. And the main like personas we see there are um, it started as being just it's the world's best tool for storyboarding and prototyping content in the sense that like if you have an idea for a commercial, you can get a draft of it in like
Yeah.
3 minutes. It's only 50% there in the sense that you need the craftsmanship of like tweaking the shots over the next hour or two to really get it in a spot where it's like 95% there. But in 3 minutes, you can get such a compelling draft to communicate your idea really quickly. So the people who first adopted it were like advertising agency creatives, so creative director or something like that, as well as brand managers within a brand. But we also have a huge contingent on the kind of movie studio side using it. So people pitching concepts internally, like I have an idea for a show, and you want to get like a simple visual to accompany it. When I was at an ad agency over a decade ago, before Popular Pays, when we would pitch commercial ideas I was working with a big insurance company as Allstate, and we had those mayhem ads. We were pitching ideas to the client, and it would be a script that the copywriter would write and like one or two comped example images that we photoshopped. And that's all you had to work with. But now, if I wanted to have Mayhem be something, I can just type in like, I can create a character. And what's cool is you have consistency between the frames of your characters, which we built. That's something that wasn't out there. And I could create a character and say like, this is, by the way, this is hypothetical just for legal reasons. This is not how they're doing it. But you can say like at Mayhem, is in a car on the highway. Like you can just type what you want and it appears in like 10 seconds
Yeah.
each shot. And you can click animate and get a draft animation. So it's really changed how people prototype content. But as we talked about, it's getting there for like visualizing the creative effects that you want for things, but it's not like you'd make a commercial from there. I think we have had a commercial that aired during the Olympics, so people have done it.
Okay.
But most people are using it for the rapid prototyping, and I would say in this like kind of like post OpenAI Sora world, and like Google's VO is pretty good. Like the quality is getting good. Where I think in like a year, people like by the end of this year, people start using it more commonly in outputs, but the majority of the like that won't become the default till like I don't know next year probably.
Super interesting. What has like have you gotten feedback from really interesting points. I think my follow-up question is here. Have you had any feedback from your clients that are now able to utilize kind of an actual video storyboard compared to like what you were doing with just text and images? And what is that experience in showcasing or presenting their idea for, say, an advertisement? Like, is it facilitating, oh, this is a fabulous idea, let's actually shoot it and create it, or is it like, oh, like that's some weird AI thing that's distracting from the actual presenting of the idea? I think it's the former, but I'll let
No, I mean, a little bit of all the above. Like we learned a lot. First, I want to say two things. I've never seen a product velocity faster. I mean, the LTX Studio team is cranking out things every week, and it's driven by what we're hearing in these conversations, but also the underlying industry, like the rising tide lifting all boats. Yes, we've got a speedboat here, but the underlying industry is also moving fast. So we're seeing new papers come out all the time, and the time from like seeing this research paper to us putting it in production is a very short window. But when we were talking to people, well, first off, the quality has gotten better even in the last few weeks to where it's no longer just a storyboarding tool, but it's really become just like a way that is changing how people think about the whole like video production landscape. And we're adding these like more power editing tools that now it's making people who weren't technical good enough to ship ideas out to like a boss or whatever. But the
Right.
most interesting things we've seen with when you ask about how are these things received, um, first off, first off, I would say um, sometimes people want to leave enough room for their own creativity and like putting seeing enough of a blank canvas to where they can color it in with their mind's eye and not having it so spelled out in a storyboard format that we've seen them do things like change the default style that they're working with from cinematic movie style to like actual sketch, like storyboard sketching. So they can still like fill it in with their mind's eye instead of having everything spelled out for them. That's one thing.
Interesting. Very
But
interesting.
but probably the most powerful feature I've seen in terms of user action to crazy result is taking a single reference image, dropping it in, and it changing the entire project or just a scene or just a shot. It's so crazy that from that one action, the way that the AI interprets a style and interprets it to the shot is superhuman. Like it's better than what a human could do with lots of hours. Many things are not. Like, it still might mess up humans' motion if they're playing a flute or something. That's pretty tricky.
Sure.
But the style reference ability of AI is crazy. It is like watching alien intelligence change your storyboard in 10 seconds. So I think people have noticed that they either want to dial it down and go to like a sketch so they can fill it in with their mind's eye, or they take their own style. Like maybe I am, a Rick and Morty show, and I can take that. You obviously use something that as a business you have the license to use, whether it's royalty-free imagery, stuff like that, or your own brand imagery. But it can learn styles with a single shot. It's like kind of mind-blowing. So those are two things. But the most recent trend has been that the new composition tools are getting so good that you can just iterate really fast to get where you want. So even if it doesn't, like, I can upload a picture and then scribble on it and say like add something here or take
Yeah.
only the pose of a person out of this picture. Like you don't even take the whole thing. Like you can tell it what you want to extract in a really smart way. So it's just getting, I think the next phase, by the way, it's not out like I just seeing where things are going. This
Yeah.
we talk about agentic behavior. We're definitely entering a phase where you will be able to just talk about what you want, and it'll be like an AI like director, basically. I think that's pretty clear that the technology is getting there, and that's for both movie editing, but everything else, like me editing a photo of myself or me creating like a presentation or whatever. Like we're getting to a point where English will be the natural command language for any
Yeah.
common work.
Yeah, and I think that that is the exciting sci-fi reality that many people, unfortunately, I think they're waiting for that, right? They're just gonna. I've heard this, from family members. Well, I'm not going to get involved because it sounds too technical. I just want to be able to speak to, my computer or my phone and have it do all the work, right? Do all these sorts of
Mhm.
things. I think, I mean, you tell me, it's going to come around. I don't know how long it's going to take to get
It's
there.
close.
It's close.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
I'll give you an
yeah,
example. Like I think everyone watching like Iron Man 1 wanted the Tony Stark
yeah.
experience of speaking to what's his name? Is it Jasper? No,
Jarvis, Jarvis.
Jarvis.
Yeah.
Jasper is the cool. It was called Jarvis and renamed. But everyone wanted an experience where you're just like talking to this really smart thing and it's doing everything for you. You can pretty much get that today if you use ChatGPT voice mode. So for example, if I'm researching something like some old historical event or some new scientific paper, you can just chat with it. You can role play a sales call. You can do anything. And you can just ramble to it on your way to work and say, hey, can you summarize all this stuff into an email so that I can send it? So you can get that kind of like Tony Stark, Jarvis experience now with that, with text, and it is very close with everything else. The one thing I'd say is I still think typing is faster, and I know that a lot of people like voice because it's easy, but and you can have that. But for example, if you want an even more powerful experience, go into like ChatGPT Canvas, like go to ChatGPT 4.0, copy and paste a block of code, or just say, hey, can you make me a game like this, Pong or whatever that plays in the browser, and it'll kick out into a Canvas mode where you're talking English to it and typing, and it's coding. So
Yeah,
that's the real sci-fi vision that will really blow people's minds. That you now are fortunate enough to live in an age where even though you never learned how to code, you can still know how to code, and like that's the kind of Keanu Reeves, I know jujitsu or I know kung fu now. Like it's basically there, but with
yeah,
English typing. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, it's a fascinating future that we're moving into, and so quickly, right? And if
Yes.
just to think, was it 2 years ago? It came out in November of 2023, 2022, ChatGPT. And
Yes. Yeah.
look at how far it's come about in yeah, just a little bit over 2 years. Um,
Yeah.
okay, well, I mean, we have a couple minutes left here. Let's talk a little bit more about what this means for the upcoming, decade or so. Um, are we then going to see with, the tool that you're creating with ChatGPT, advancing at a miraculous pace, are we going to start seeing like single person, let's just say marketing agencies, they have an army of bots, these AI agents that are taking demands and requests perfectly and able to execute on those? Like, is that where we're moving into if we're just going to focus on the marketing industry?
Definitely. I mean, I'll say two things there. You will, yeah, we will have, the first, one or like we'll say under like one, two, or three person billion-dollar company, maybe one person. You'll see that in the coming years. But even today, agents are not perfect, but there's plenty of
Yeah.
cases where they just need to be good enough. So there's some, not that I think this is necessarily positive near term, but there'll be new applications soon. But for example, there's like a Y Combinator company that you can see their demo of a AI agent. You just give it some task like, I want you to find threads on Reddit or X or whatever that talk about XYZ thing, and I want you to comment in a natural language, and but maybe you talk about our solution if the chance comes up or whatever. So things that you might have hired people to do, yeah, bots will do. It's dark in some sense that people already talk about the dead internet, and I think we're gonna have lots of bots and things that are rebranded as agents that might pollute our experiences for sure. But on the positive side, I mean, who wants to use like a travel agent when you can just use Google Flights and book a flight yourself? So there will be positive things from this. There will be negative things from this. But another thing is, I feel we talked about like the pace of change. I feel a little bit optimistic that we'll be able to handle it in the sense that the flip side of us having really small attention spans is that we actually have a pretty good capacity for taking in new information. And
Mm.
so society might struggle with the changes because society moves a lot slower. It's like an aircraft carrier turning. But on an individual basis, you can wake up tomorrow and like, hey, all of a sudden this technology called Uber is here, and you can just call a cab from your phone. And we're pretty good at figuring stuff out. And the pace of change is rapid and it's only going to get faster, but I still feel pretty confident that we can handle it. It will eventually get overwhelming, but at first I'm more worried about like the societal part of like what happens to our processes and jobs. And media is the thing I'm most concerned about, like disinformation. But we'll find our own antidotes for that. Like there, it is an issue, but we've faced hard things before, and I think we can figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I'm on the fence with this. Like, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I've just had so many conversations with other guests that say something. They make just as good arguments on the other end, right? So I think as a podcaster, I think I need to be as objective as possible. So I'm going to be on the fence.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah, I like your argumentation, and I obviously agree with it to a certain extent. Um, I just think that there's also, maybe to give a little bit of pushback. Um, with the pace of change and I don't know if it's the inability or the lack of desire for people to learn new things. Um, I think that there are going to be people that are left behind. Obviously, to your point, there will be people that will be proactive and understand what's going on, make the necessary steps, and that's kind of the point of this podcast as well, to help people think about that.
Mm.
Um, but just like the horse and buggy transformation or revolution, there were people that were still taking care of the horse's shoes as the population of horses across America was dwindling year by year. So did they go into the wheel industry? Probably not. They probably had a pretty big struggle. So hopefully something like a conversation like this can get people to at least start thinking. It's like, oh, maybe I will be left behind. I mean, the things that you're talking about with this video that's able to be generated simply by dropping an image and text, like it's it's pretty substantial. For people that are listening to this podcast, maybe for some of the first times, like there is a ton of technology out there that's coming about really quickly. One of the examples that you were saying with these AI agents, I remember interacting with one of the first AI agents, and I can't remember the name of it. I was trying to think of it, but it failed like miserably. And this is just, 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, agent, go and interact with the internet, give me, this research paper, whatever it was. And you could see it, like it was showing the thought that it was having. And it's like, okay, trying to do this, fail, try to do this, fail, try to do this, fail. And it was just like, okay, well, this doesn't work. I have to wait, 5 years. And, 2 years later, it's ready to go. So I don't know. It's a bit of a ramble, but
there's so much to say on that. Like, at one point in time, we were all like farmers and hunter-gatherers, and we invented all these new professions because it got easier to do that. And it's going to keep happening with every industry. But for every time where it does hit, like the people taking care of the horses, it does hit certain industries. Hopefully, 2 to 5 times more industries pop up as of that or after that. But for every many people where it will hit and impact, the hope, and I think data would hopefully show that it's also going to lift people up. So whether it's like on a personal basis, like if you always wanted to make a movie but thought that time in your life has passed and you just, it's not in the cards for you anymore, you can do it. Like you can now make an album, make a movie, and it takes craftsmanship to still get it out of that kind of like default AI slop. But yeah, I had a short story someone else wrote that I've always thought should have some kind of video accompanying it. And it's the first thing I try to make when I tested out LTX Studio. So those, on a personal basis, those kind of things can come up. Like I've always wanted to make a web app, but never knew how to ship it. I shipped an app. Anyone can go to the URL and see it. It's just kind of cool. It's just a personal project. So on a personal basis, that's the case, but it'll also lift people up in terms of giving them opportunities for advancement. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but it's something we have to grapple with. But maybe I'm just a default optimist. So that's why you're on the fence. Some other guests are negative about it, but I'm pretty optimistic because we've done a lot of hard things in the past, and this is just accelerating the pace. But I don't see anything like fundamentally different in the scope of time that we're talking about in terms of like, by the time we retire, yeah, things are going to be weird. But
yeah. Very fascinating, we can say. Yeah. Well, maybe that's a perfect place to end the discussion, because I think we could just go back and forth for a while, like me trying to be on the fence and then putting in different ideas. But no, you make very valid arguments here. Corbett, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It was very interesting. You're very knowledgeable. It's great to have you share your insights. Obviously, you've talked about the business and the work that you're working on. We'll have the links in the show notes. Are there any other places like LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever that you would like people to follow you on?
Sure. Yeah, I'm at Corbett Drummey across pretty much all of social. So whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, you can find me there. And go to lightricks.com if you want to check out any of the products we talked about.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah,
well, I'll have those in the show notes. Yeah, no, a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. And maybe when we both retire, I think we're roughly the same age, so I'll have to have you back onto the podcast, because I think this thing's just going to keep going forever, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, my tune might change in the far future, but we'll listen back to the show notes and see how well we predicted things.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel, where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline
points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.